I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Dark Obsessions, no other than Delphine McClelland. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Delphine, and can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, so I'm Delphine McClelland. I am a newly dark paranormal romance author. Debuting my first novel, Dark Obsessions, that's based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, my current city that I'm actually living in.
Congratulations for producing this novel, Miss Delphine. So, can you give our listeners a brief overview of Dark Obsessions?
Yes, I like to say it's kind of the adult version of Twilight. It's been reviewed as being Twilight meets 50 Shades of Grey with a dash of South. So it is a dark romance novel about a vampire named Cairo who is looking for kind of a new playground. He has stumbled upon Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a city that is free of the council, an organization that is been determined to eradicate the world of all paranormal creatures, vampires, witches, wants to get rid of them all and kind of keep them into the idea that they are just a figment of our imaginations or part of our dark stories. While Cairo is in Charlotte, there's this energy that's just very new to him. It's unlike anything that he's ever experienced before it that drives him to stay in the city until he actually meets Skylar and then he understands a little bit more of why he can't leave the city. And then it gets kind of more into their relationship as it blossoms. He is intending on making her his latest victim, his newest little mouse, but he has a deeper connection to her that he can't hurt her the way that he would like to.
Interesting. So, what was the writing process like for Dark Obsessions?
Surprisingly for me, being my first novel, it was actually pretty easy. I never would have pegged myself to be a writer. It was not something that I thought that I would ever do. I was an avid reader, and I still am an avid reader. But got the idea from a coworker of mine at the time to write, and one day when the idea kind of popped in my head, the story just flowed out of me pretty easily. I think I wrote the first draft in about a year and a half.
Yes. So, did you face any significant challenges along the way?
Biggest challenge was figuring out what to do with it. So when I initially set out to start writing it, it was going to live on my computer. I was not going to publish it. I wasn't going to put it out. I wasn't going to do anything with it. It was just kind of a thing to see if I could actually write a novel. When I was getting probably halfway through it, I was like, I should at least give it a try to publish it to see what happens. And then in that process, I was going to actually self-publish it and do it on my own, and actually got picked up by Dorrance. So it was all turned out to be a lot easier than I thought. But the biggest challenge was just kind of getting over the fear that I could actually write a book and that I actually did it.
Well done, Miss Delphine. So, how did you come up with the title of Dark Obsessions?
The title was probably the last thing that I came up with, thought about as the story was progressing and writing it. It kind of came out as a play from Cairo. So Skylar is he intends, again, like I said, when he meets her, he intends to make her his next victim, his next little mouse. So he has dark intentions with her, and she becomes his new obsession. So it's Dark Obsessions is kind of Skylar to Cairo.
Can you describe the main characters or themes in Dark Obsessions that readers can look forward to?
Yeah, so the two main characters, of course, are Cairo and Skylar. Cairo's a 300-year-old vampire who has a penchant for torture and violence when it comes to his victims. He likes to dabble in medieval torture, and he goes into this kind of cat and mouse game where he likes to lure the pretty women in with his good looks, and then he goes through a series of where he tortures them and heals them and tortures them and heals them, and then he'll determine, if he's gonna finally feed on them or if he's gonna let them go. And it is his intent to be as dark as he can because of the darkness that was essentially poured into him and trained into him by his sire Cairo. So he wants to please his teacher, so to speak, and become just as dark, if not darker, than his teacher. And then when he meets Skylar, Skylar is essentially the yin to his yang. She is the direct opposite of him. She's full of life, so much curiosity. She actually has a fascination with vampires and this whole paranormal world because she's like me. She's an avid reader, so she reads all the books, she watches all the movies. So she never would have expected that this world that she was so involved in was actually real until she meets Cairo and she becomes the light to his darkness.
Did you draw from any personal experiences when crafting the story or characters of Dark Obsessions?
Not really any personal experiences. All of the characters in the book are loosely based off of people that I know. So Skylar is loosely based off of me. Her friend in the story, Angelina, is loosely based off of my best friend, Rebecca. And then inadvertently, some of the other characters are just kind of people that I know. For me, Cairo in his appearance is a mix of my two celebrity crushes, a young Jason Momoa mixed with an artist named Jadana, and then Malachi is the other vampire in the story who his appearance and kind of mannerisms come off of what an artist at Scar would look like if he were human.
Oh, so what do you hope the readers will take away from your book after they finish reading it?
When they read it, I hope they kind of see this idea that monsters are created and not born. So it's kind of funny when people hear the word vampire, they immediately go to them being these evil, demonic creatures. And that's not essentially what they are in my story. While they do a lot of dark and violent things, they were never intended to be these evil creatures. But living in this world and being around humanity where signs of things like envy and jealousy and greed kind of all come into play, all of that essentially taints who they become and and becomes the story of who they are. They get labeled as these monsters, and that's essentially what they decide to be. So I hope people take away from it is just that we have the ability to create our own monsters by the way we treat people and the way that we label them before we actually give them an opportunity to tell us who they are.
Very well said, Miss Delphine. So, were there any particular authors or books that influence your writing style for these dark
I'm a
obsessions?
big paranormal reader, so I read a lot of. I mean, of course, I read all of Stephanie Meyer's and Twilight, a lot of Cassandra Clare, Jennifer Armentrout. Like I said, I'm a big paranormal romance, so I think in a sense all of that kind of influence I played a part into my writing, and I just wanted to create a very different story from what other people have actually written in the past. So I didn't want the vampires to necessarily be these evil creatures. They do evil. They have this darkness, but there's a reason for it, and you'll get to know that reason in the second book that I'm working on.
Oh, so this will be a series, a quartet, or a trilogy?
It is at least going to be a trilogy. I haven't decided if I'm going to make it longer than that, but there is definitely three books in the works.
Looking
But
forward for that. So before we go, and I want to shout out our listeners in which country? In Taiwan. Thank you, Taiwan, for supporting this podcast because in Taipei City, I got 85% audience share. Toyuan at 5, Tongqing City, Xiaovi, Guangzhou, Tainan, Changhua, and Hanan City. Now, thank you so much, Taiwan, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers, authors all over the world. Can you share a memorable moment from your writing journey that has significant impact on your
let's see. I don't know. I mean, just the whole from start to finish. Like I said, it was a surprise for me that I actually sat down to write it. So that's been a big part of my journey. A big love of me is just the fact that I actually wrote it, and it came very easy to me, and it become my new passion. Like I said, I never would have expected me to be a writer. I never would have said that I was a writer. But it has actually become the biggest passion in my life and the thing that I want to do more of.
can you read one of your favorite chapter of Dark Obsessions?
Um, let's see. I really, I think I will read a little bit of the first chapter, which is called On the Prowl.
Okay.
325 miles of shoreline on the North and South Carolina border, Lake Wiley was the ideal spot for relaxation and fun. The lake was picturesque and the house was secluded, which was perfect for Cairo. The house itself was over 8,000 square feet, located in a quiet neighborhood with a private wooded lot. There were lakefront views from every room, including the most spectacular views from the master bedroom with its own private patio access to point to the lake. For a human, it was the perfect place, a beautiful oasis to wash the stress of the day away. But for a 300-year-old vampire, the property still needed work. Since acquiring one of the best pieces of property on the lake, Cairo was busy working tireless on the house that so many before him loved. Day and night, delivery trucks came and went with supplies and decor for Cairo to transform his new home from top to bottom. The basement was going to be a huge part of that transformation since Cairo was turning it into his new torture chamber. For 3 weeks now, all the neighbors were curious about their new mysterious neighbor. They all wanted to get to know him and find out what he was doing to this beautiful home that had already been remodeled 2 months prior to him moving in. Trying to focus on the needed home improvements was hard for Cairo as he became distracted by all the alluring half naked women that came out to the lake for some summer fun. By day, the summer heat was just too much to bear, but as soon as the sun set, it was time for all the humans to play. Lake Wally would come alive with people of all walks of life, all shapes and sizes. While the beautiful women enjoyed lying in the sun and splashing in the lake, they were unaware that they were being watched. Cairo was there waiting and watching in the shadows like the monster he was raised to be. Cairo was intrigued by them and would stop the work he was doing just to listen in on their conversations that was mostly about him. To the untrained eye, he was young, sexy, and single, which brought up a lot of questions for the neighboring women. They all seemed to want to know how old he was, what he did for a living, and how he could afford that house. More importantly, they all wanted to know what he was doing all day and into the night. For some of the women, they could care less about the renovations. All they cared about was what type of woman he was looking for. He was the newest eligible bachelor to the neighborhood, the man that everyone wanted and believed that they all needed in their lives. He was perfect in every way. All the women were his type simply because they were of the opposite sex, and they all contained something that he wanted, something that he would kill to have. Some were cute and some were even sexy to him, but they all would fear him if they knew what he was. Cairo imagined every one of them strapped to a different device in his torture palace. Oh, how would they scream, he thought. The thought of their frightened faces and screams made his fangs come free from the hidden compartment in his mouth. Kyra wanted their fears, their screams, and most of all, he wanted their blood. Just a little tease.
Bravo, Miss Delphine. So, is there a specific scene or chapter in the book that holds special meaning to you?
My favorite chapter in the book is believe it's chapter 12. It's called She Belongs to Me, and it's actually the scene where Cairo sees Skylar for the first time and realizes that there is more to his connection with her, and it's more than just blood for him. That's probably one of my favorite chapters. It was my favorite chapter to write.
How do you think your book stands out in its genre or category?
Um, I mean, I think it stands out in a way that it is a very much a different type of novel than what you see. If you look at more paranormal novels, there's always an image of a guy and a girl in some sort of embrace. I wanted to steer away from that because I feel like that concept has been overdone, as well as just a lot of the themes in paranormal romance books. It's always this high school girl that falls in love with this ancient vampire. In my story, Skylar is a bit older. She's a little bit more mature. She's a woman. She wants to stand on her own. She doesn't necessarily need a man, but she wants a man in her life. She's very much fierce and independent. And so it becomes a really kind of intriguing dynamic between her and Cairo because you essentially have this alpha male and this alpha female battling and figuring out how to become one in a relationship when neither one of them want to give up who they are. So the whole concept of the book is different, and that's why I didn't want to have that traditional cover where there was the guy and the girl in the embrace. For the fantasy purpose of the book, I wanted people to determine what Cairo looked like for them, as opposed to giving them that image and making that be the idea of what he is. Like I said, for me, he's a mix of Jadana and a young Jason Momoa, but somebody else may read it and have a different image of who they are. And I wanted to preserve that and keep that alive throughout the book. So since the book takes place in Charlotte, it has the Charlotte skyline on the cover, and the energy sequences is a representation of the two main characters of Cairo and Skylar and how that energy is going to pull and gravitate them towards each other. And that energy will be played out through all the covers of the book, and you'll see how it evolves and how they change.
What kind of readers do you believe will connect most with your book and why?
Those that like Twilight, it's gonna definitely be an 18 and over audience. It is very much an adult novel that has after the first book, it has a good little amount of smut in it, and I do plan to increase that to give everybody that little spice. So you have that dark as well as that spice throughout the book.
Yes, indeed. But before we go on, please do listen to my other podcast. I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our fourth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef and one of five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. So please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about our culinary courses, people. Culinary courses for Volume 1 Basics, Volume 2 Fundamental, and Volume 3 Principles. If you want to create a delicious food, please do enroll or purchase our culinary courses. So, Ms. Delphine, how has your perspective as an author evolved since the publication of this book?
Have a better understanding of just how difficult it is to be an author. Like I said, for me, I know the journey for an author for everybody is different. For me, writing the book was probably the easiest piece of it for me. The hardest part that has been is promoting it and getting people to read it as a new author, trying to build that fan base and getting the book out there has been hard. And I knew it was gonna be hard, but it's been there has been moments where it's been harder than I thought, and like I mean, I've had days where I have thought about giving up and just kind of not doing it anymore and not putting out the second book. But the passion for writing for me is so strong that literally every time I say that I'm not gonna write the second book or I'm not gonna finish it, I get into this bit of a depressive state because all I want to do is write. So I know it's a passion and it's just something that I just gotta keep pushing forward, and eventually the small fires I hope will turn into a blaze of glory.
For sure, looking forward for that blaze of glory, Miss Delphine. So, what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are looking to embark on their own writing journeys?
I would tell them to stick with it. Like, just for me, I kept my story to myself. I didn't tell anybody that I was actually writing this book until I was probably halfway through it. I waited as long as I could before I told anybody because I didn't want people to be like, "Oh, you can't write a book, you can't do that," and let those negative thoughts influence me. So I would tell people to just, if you're nervous about it, like keep your story to yourself until you're ready to put it out there, and in that way, no matter what anybody says, you'll have the passion and the desire to keep going because you'd be invested in it. It's so much easier to let go of things when you've just started and you haven't put the investment in behind it, and people can discourage you. Oh, you can't write a book, and it'll be so much easier to drop that and let it go. But if you are invested in it and have that passion, no matter what people tell you you can't do, you'll be able to do it. Because I was one, I like I said, I never thought that I would write this book. A coworker of mine gave me the idea, and he probably pushed it on me for a good 6 months before I actually sat down and wrote the book. Every time he would say I should write, I literally laughed at him, and it was like, nope, I am a reader, I'm not a writer. And who knew I wrote an award-winning book? So it's been pretty cool.
Yes. Here we go. So, Miss Delphine, how do you see your book fitting into a broader literary landscape or cultural conventions?
I think it could fit in just fine. I mean, like I said, it has that Twilight esque ability to it. So I think it could be the next great paranormal novel. I just gotta keep pushing it out there.
Yes, pushing out, and stop procrastinating in promoting dark
Yes.
obsessions. Marketing is the number one. Once you finish your book, wow, marketing does work all, because if you don't market your book, nothing will buy for it. So, Miss Delphine, lastly, what next for you as an author?
So next, I am currently in the final editing phases of the sequel to Dark Obsessions. And I still work at a full-time job, so I work by day, work and write by night. And so, like I said, the second book is in the works. I hope to have that one in production by September of this year, and I'm hoping to have it out and completed by the end of April of next year.
Looking forward for that, and you are most welcome to come back and promote your second book of your
Would
trilogy.
I would absolutely love to come back.
Yes, and I just want to promote our Food 101 Review Foundation, aiming to help less fortunate children of the world. Let's help these less fortunate children to enhance their education through this foundation. So, people, if you have the passion or giving, what do you call this, generous, you have this generosity, please do donate on Book 101 Review Foundation. So, Miss Delphine, can you please invite our listeners to support your dark obsessions?
Yes, so I'm on all of the social media. I'm on Instagram, TikTok. It's all under my name, Delphine McClelland. My Facebook is Dark Obsessions, and I do have a website which is www.delphinemcclelland.com. So you can find me all there. I keep up with the latest of what's going on with Dark Obsessions as well as the second book. And on my website, I do list all the places that I will be. So you can always, if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, or in the surrounding areas, you can always come out and see me.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Delphine McClelland because if you support her, more books to come. And thank you, Feedspot, for being number 4 best book podcast on the planet. And of course, listen note for my listen score of 27 and belong to 10% popular show globally. Thank you so much. So, Miss Delphine McClelland, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been fun.
What do you got, people? See you soon.